World War II is often remembered through the roar of engines, the clash of steel, and the thunder of artillery. A conflict defined by tanks grinding across continents, by planes locked in deadly duels, and by soldiers storming blood soaked shores. Yet behind the smoke and destruction, there existed another kind of weapon, one that relied not on brute strength, but on imagination. What if one of the Allies' most effective tools wasn't forged from iron, but crafted from rubber and sound? Not bullets or bombs, but recordings and illusions? This is the remarkable true story of a secret American military unit known as the Ghost Army, an extraordinary group of artists, designers, sound engineers, and performers who turned deception into strategy. Armed with inflatable tanks, fake radio transmissions, and carefully staged soundscapes, they created entire phantom divisions that misled enemy forces, buying time and saving countless lives. Their battlefield was not defined by destruction, but by creativity, a silent war of illusion fought with art, wit, and invention. In 1944, following the D-Day landings, the Allied forces pushed steadily deeper into continental Europe. The Western Front had become a vast, shifting chessboard where every maneuver carried mortal consequence. Though weakened, the German army remained a formidable opponent, experienced, resourceful, and capable of striking back with fierce determination. Each advance was met with cunning counterattacks, each misstep punished with devastating precision. The struggle was no longer merely a contest of weapons, but of endurance, intelligence, and will. In that tense equilibrium, every tactical decision, whether to move, to feint, or to hold, meant the difference between progress and catastrophe, between saving lives and losing thousands in a single miscalculation. It was within this perilous stage of the campaign that the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, better known as the Ghost Army, was deployed. Conceived as a unit of deception rather than destruction, it wielded an arsenal not of firepower, but of creativity. Inflatable tanks rumbled across empty fields, massive speakers projected the sounds of phantom convoys, radio operators transmitted false signals, and skilled performers staged elaborate illusions of entire divisions that existed only in imagination. Across more than 20 operations, this band of artists, engineers, and designers orchestrated one of the most audacious psychological strategies in modern warfare. By convincing the German high command of fictitious troop movements and illusory armies, they diverted enemy attention and firepower away from the real Allied positions, preserving thousands of lives through the power of misdirection and artful deception. As the tide of conflict turned in Europe, a new necessity emerged within the Allied command, the need for illusion as a weapon. Tactical deception became a vital tool to conceal large-scale offensives, to disguise vulnerable gaps along the defensive line, and to project strength where there was none. The objective was not merely to fight, but to manipulate perception, to make the enemy see an army that did not exist, or overlook one that did. This unconventional approach found inspiration in earlier British ingenuity, particularly Operation Bertram in El Alamein, Egypt, where artifice and engineering had successfully misled Axis intelligence. From that model of creative warfare arose an even bolder experiment, an invisible army designed not to destroy, but to deceive, turning the theater of war into a stage where illusion could save lives. Unlike traditional combat units, the formation of this extraordinary force began with an unconventional recruitment process. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops did not seek hardened soldiers trained for direct battle. It sought imagination. Its ranks filled with graduates from art schools such as Pratt Institute and the Rhode Island School of Design. Creative minds from Madison Avenue advertising firms, set designers from Hollywood studios, and sound engineers skilled in the craft of illusion. These recruits were chosen not for their trigger discipline, but for their ability to paint, sculpt, design, and perform. Among them were individuals who would later achieve fame in peacetime: fashion designer Bill Blass, painter Ellsworth Kelly, and photographer Art Kane, each embodying the artistic soul that defined this army of illusion. Together, they transformed creativity into camouflage and deception into survival. Their mission was unlike any other in the history of modern warfare. They were not sent to fight, but to perform, to stage what might be called a theater of the battlefield. The members of the Ghost Army became actors in a grand illusion, tasked with impersonating entire divisions that were 20 or 30 times larger than their actual numbers. Through carefully choreographed displays of movement, sound, and light, they created the illusion of massive troop buildups where none existed. Trucks drove in endless loops to suggest reinforcements. Inflatable tanks appeared overnight like steel giants, and radio operators mimicked the chatter of phantom commanders. Every operation was a performance. Every deception a scene designed to manipulate the enemy's perception. In this strange but vital art of war, victory depended not on the strength of arms, but on the power of imagination. At the heart of their strategy lay the three pillars of deception, beginning with the mastery of sight. The 603rd Camouflage Engineers, nicknamed Rubber Army, specialized in crafting illusions for the eye. Their arsenal consisted of inflatable replicas of Sherman tanks, artillery pieces, jeeps, trucks, and even aircraft, each lightweight enough for a handful of men to lift, yet convincing enough to mislead an enemy observer. A single inflatable Sherman weighed barely 40 kilograms, but from 5,000 feet in the air, it was indistinguishable from the real thing. The artistry went beyond simple placement. They sculpted false tank tracks with bulldozers, arranged decoy equipment as if abandoned in haste, and even adorned their uniforms with fabricated division insignias to enhance authenticity. Every visual cue was deliberate, a performance designed to be seen, interpreted, and believed by enemy reconnaissance. Through this meticulous choreography of illusion, they turned empty fields into phantom fortresses and shadows into instruments of strategy. The second pillar of illusion belonged to the realm of sound, a symphony of deception conducted by the 132nd Signal Service Company Special. This unit transformed the battlefield into a stage of auditory manipulation, wielding not weapons, but waves of sound. Using high-fidelity recordings captured at Fort Knox, they recreated the sonic texture of war. The rumble of tanks, the clatter of machinery, the murmur of troops on the move. These sounds were broadcast through massive loudspeakers, each weighing nearly 500 pounds and mounted on trucks, capable of projecting lifelike noise across 15 miles of terrain. Every operation followed a scripted sequence, a carefully timed sound play that mirrored the movements of imaginary divisions. One night might feature the echo of engineers hammering bridge supports. Another, the slow advance of an armored column groaning over a river crossing. To enemy listeners, it all felt real, the perfect auditory mirage. Convinced they were under imminent threat, opposing artillery would unleash fire upon empty fields and shadows. Through these orchestrated illusions, the Ghost Army proved that in modern war, even silence could be weaponized, and sound itself could become a form of strategy. The third pillar of deception unfolded across the invisible airwaves, an intricate play of false signals orchestrated by the unit's radio specialists. Known as spoof radio, this art of illusion relied not on visuals or sound, but on mastery of communication itself. Operators in the Ghost Army became performers of invisible theater, crafting convincing imitations of real divisions through their transmissions. Each telegraph operator in the military possessed a distinctive rhythm and cadence, nicknamed a fist, that skilled listeners could identify like a signature. The Ghost Army's radio men trained meticulously to replicate these individual styles, perfectly mimicking the communication patterns of genuine units such as the 6th Armored Division, even after those divisions had quietly moved elsewhere. Their broadcasts were filled with deliberate mundanity, routine weather updates, food supply chatter, and harmless logistical instructions, designed to sound authentic to enemy intelligence intercepting the signals. To German analysts, these messages confirmed what they expected, that the divisions they believed still occupied certain areas remained firmly in place. In truth, the real forces were miles away, advancing unseen, while the Ghost Army's phantom transmissions held the enemy's gaze on an empty horizon. Through this manipulation of information, the illusion became complete, a war fought not only with soldiers and machines, but with rhythm, timing, and trust in the power of perception. Beyond the visual, sonic, and radio illusions, the Ghost Army also mastered the art of human performance, the street-level theater of deception. Their actors, often officers trained in improvisation, carried out elaborate charades designed to reinforce the illusion of phantom divisions. Disguised with counterfeit insignias and driving jeeps marked with false unit numbers, they would enter nearby towns posing as members of major formations preparing for an imminent offensive. In cafes and bars near the front, they ordered drinks, laughed loudly, and accidentally spoke of upcoming operations, details carefully fabricated to be overheard by local informants or enemy spies. Meanwhile, on the outskirts, fake command posts sprang to life. Tents erected, guards posted, and military vehicles moving in convincing patterns. A single officer, dressed to resemble a high-ranking commander, might stroll purposefully between vehicles while subordinates saluted. A scene staged not for morale, but for the eyes of enemy reconnaissance aircraft overhead. Every gesture, every careless word was part of the script. Through this blend of theater and strategy, the Ghost Army transformed deception into a living art form, one that blurred the line between performance and warfare, imagination and survival. In December 1944, on the eve of the Battle of the Bulge, the Allied advance faced a grave vulnerability. Along General Patton's extended front line near Bedemberg, Luxembourg, a dangerous gap had opened, an invitation for a potential German breakthrough. Into this precarious situation stepped the Ghost Army, 1,100 men tasked with impersonating 2 full divisions, nearly 30,000 troops, holding the sector. For 8 tense days, they orchestrated one of the most audacious acts of deception in the European theater. Convoys of trucks moved endlessly up and down the line, creating the illusion of reinforcements. Giant speakers projected the noise of engines, construction, and troop movements. Radio operators transmitted false communications, while inflatable tanks and artillery filled the landscape with convincing silhouettes. To enemy reconnaissance, the area appeared heavily fortified and alive with activity. The ruse worked. German forces, deceived by the display, held back from attacking what they believed was a strong Allied position. That illusion bought critical time, preserving the integrity of Patton's flank and preventing a potential collapse on the Western Front. In the quiet that followed, it became clear that the Ghost Army's weapons were not made of steel or gunpowder, but of ingenuity, coordination, and nerve. In March 1945, as the Allies prepared for Operation Plunder, the massive crossing of the Rhine River that would open the road into the heart of Germany, a final masterpiece of deception unfolded at Viersen. The Ghost Army's mission was to convince German intelligence that the formidable U.S. 9th Armored Division would attempt the crossing near Dusseldorf, diverting enemy strength away from the true point of attack. To execute this illusion, every element of the unit's craft was deployed in perfect harmony. In the forests surrounding Viersen, more than 600 inflatable tanks and artillery pieces were positioned to resemble a vast armored formation. All night long, the air echoed with the recorded clamor of pontoon bridge construction, hammers, engines, and the creak of heavy equipment. Radio specialists broadcast continuous fake transmissions imitating the 9th Armored Division's signal traffic, while uniformed actors wearing its insignia appeared in nearby towns, chatting about the impending assault for informants to overhear. The deception was flawless. German commanders, convinced of the ruse, shifted 2 armored divisions and numerous heavy artillery batteries to defend Viersen, waiting for an attack that never came. Meanwhile, the real crossing of the Rhine took place far to the north, where Allied forces advanced swiftly, with far fewer casualties than anticipated. The Viersen operation stood as the Ghost Army's crowning achievement, a triumph of imagination and coordination that proved illusion, when wielded with precision, could alter the course of history itself. The results of the Ghost Army's work were measured not in territories gained, but in lives spared. Official estimates suggest that their operations saved between 15 and 30,000 Allied soldiers from certain death or injury. By luring enemy artillery fire toward phantom encampments and inflatable battalions, they absorbed blows meant for real troops. Their elaborate performances drew German attention and resources away from critical points along the front, easing the path for genuine offensives. Entire divisions were misdirected to defend empty fields and false crossings, allowing actual units to advance with minimal resistance. In a conflict where every inch of ground was paid for in blood, the Ghost Army achieved the impossible. They changed outcomes without firing a shot. Their illusions bought time, diverted danger, and transformed creativity into protection. Behind their deception lay a quiet truth that imagination, when strategically employed, could preserve life as effectively as any weapon forged in steel. The achievements of the Ghost Army were so extraordinary that they vanished into silence for decades, locked away behind the highest levels of secrecy. Their operations, classified as top secret, remained hidden from public knowledge for more than 40 years, until their files were finally declassified in 1996. For generations, the world had no idea that an entire army of artists, designers, and sound engineers had fought a war, not with bullets, but with illusion. When these men returned home, they slipped quietly back into civilian life. Many went on to become celebrated figures in art, fashion, and design. Yet they carried with them a story they could never tell. Bound by secrecy, they spoke little of the strange and invisible battlefield where creativity had been their weapon. Their families, their friends, even their fellow veterans remained unaware of the role they had played in protecting thousands of lives. Their sacrifice was not only in what they risked during the war, but in what they were forbidden to share afterward, a legacy of silent valor that only history, decades later, would finally uncover. The Ghost Army proved that triumph need not always come from firepower or steel, but from ingenuity and imagination. They showed that creativity itself could be a form of strength, one capable of reshaping the very nature of conflict. Through art, design, and psychological mastery, they turned deception into a strategic asset, transforming illusion into protection and performance into survival. Their legacy endures as a testament to the idea that intellect and innovation can wield as much influence on the battlefield as any weapon. In their hands, artistry became not an indulgence, but a decisive force that altered the course of history. Recognition for the Ghost Army came late, but it finally arrived. In 2022, the unit was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest civilian honors in the United States, acknowledging their extraordinary contribution to the Allied victory. Their story stands as a lasting testament to the power of creative thinking, proving that imagination can be as vital to survival as courage or discipline, even in the darkest hours of human history. It reminds us that behind the cold arithmetic of war lie remarkable stories of ingenuity, bravery, and, in this rare case, artistry turned into strategy. The Ghost Army's legacy endures not only as a chapter of military innovation, but as a celebration of the human capacity to transform creativity into a shield against chaos.